And it is the 10th day, believe it or not, of December. We'll get there, hopefully. 2023. I'm going to be your host, Dana Durnford. Welcome. Welcome to the never-ending misery machine known as nuclear. The perpetual disease factory known as nuclear power. So there wasn't a single academic on the entire planet, when they looked at these pictures, that didn't say nuclear academic. There wasn't a single nuclear engineer, nuclear professor, nuclear scientist that didn't say the fuel pools in the reactor cores are gone, just by that one picture. But if you waited a little bit while, a couple of years, it looked like this. And so there's no way there was any academic in the nuclear industry in the entire planet that would have looked at these and said the reactors were still there and the fuel pools were intact. Not one. But that's what they told you. There wasn't a single nuclear scientist, nuclear professor, nuclear engineer, nuclear student on the entire planet when they looked at these detonations of Unit 1 to your left and Reactor 3 to your right, didn't say to themselves and anybody in the room that the reactors are gone and the fuel pool is falling out of the sky right in front of us. But the mainstream media, no, they told you, well, everything is hunky-dory. And they built these contraptions on the stumps that they don't physically touch the stumps left over, just so they can pretend that they were in the fuel pools that every academic on the planet knew didn't exist. And unequivocally, without exception, knew didn't exist. And that the French government and many other countries made models of the radioactive fallout while your mainstream media told you there was nothing. And the models were 1 million to 10 million in this particular study based on 31 days of radioactive fallout. But they didn't include the actual nuclear meltdowns. They didn't include the fuel pools at the top of the buildings that every academic on the planet would have known is gone. And then this year, they moved the goalpost again and said they rolled out a professor at the Department of Nuclear Quantum Engineering, quite the accolades, who said that 1,000 tanks had 2.2 grams of tritium. So nothing got out is what they're saying. And that even when it does get out, is equal to 3 grams of sugar going into the ocean. But that's over 30 years. So each year they're going to release the equivalent of 16.666, just one of those divided 16 times. If they chunk that into a pie chunk 16 times, and one of them is what the nuclear industry, the International Atomic Energy Agency, Yale University, Harvard University, Stanford University, Oxford University, MIT University, all asserted that's all that's going to get out of the buildings that don't exist no more. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags, but nothing got out. They're growing food right alongside of one-ton bags of radiation in an exclusion zone banned by 55 countries in 14 prefectures for a decade. But nothing got out. That's the official story. Nothing got out. Despite the fact, which every academic on the planet would have known, that everything got out. There's nothing left. That each of the buildings, there's 4 of them, each of the buildings were a minimum of 100 Chernobyls, each one of these buildings. Chernobyl was a new reactor. It was graphite mostly. These are pure uranium, pure plutonium. We lost the entire inventories. And
all I said was it wasn't like a banana or a potato chip or walking in the sunshine. This is kind of severe punishment, isn't it?
Yes, you had the media worldwide come out and attacked me because I said it wasn't like a banana, that it wasn't like a potato chip, That it wasn't like flying in an airplane. It wasn't like walking in the sunshine. Fuel core material from the Fukushima plant detected plutonium, uranium-236, curium discharged into the environment. The cesium levels in the lyddite, forget about the plutonium, uranium, curium, and everything else. The media only wants to acknowledge cesium. It's so radioactive, the cesium alone, it would have to be buried in cement partitions. This is in a community where they never stopped growing food and shipping it to your countries. 1 year later, Neptunium-239, 35 kilometers from the Fukushima meltdown, published in the journal Decaying of Plutonium-239. They actually have models of the Neptunium-239 radioactive fallout. This is based on 20 days of radioactive, 20 days after the tsunami, 15 days after the last reactor detonated. Leading director in Japan, nuclear power generation, the only invention that may destroy the future of the human beings. It's the only technology that exists that has those particular attributes because it kills all species, not just the humans. The trees, the bacteria, the fungus, everything that the plants are dependent upon, the ecosystem is dependent upon, and all the species. Enormous spread of radiation, levels so high in the hills of Lydia that locals dare not go near it. 150,000 microsieverts, so 150,000 times 720 atoms. You should never be there. It's airborne. It's everywhere. This is not like there's a piece out there somewhere and there's pulsing energy. This is perpetual rain, radioactive fallout that never stopped coming out of this facility. Radioactive force and permanent risk must be cut down. Every gust of wind showers cesium particles over the village. They only cleaned up, and I say that loosely, they picked up the topsoil at 3% of the land they claim, or they tried to anyway, which resulted in 30 million one-ton bags. It's equal to 5 rows of traffic around the entire planet, bumper to bumper. But nothing got out, Dana. And so the forest, just the pollen is radioactive. All the plants are the same way, right? And so that's why you're seeing this dramatic nosedive of the pollinators, the moths, the bees, and that post-Fukushima nuclear meltdowns. First time since meltdown, surge in radioactive cesium levels caused incinerators to shut. There were 3 people at this one incinerator in Tokyo. There's many incinerators in Tokyo, 36 million people, metropolitan Tokyo. But 3 people on the same day at the incinerators had heart attacks. You ever heard a story like that before? There's one shopping street in Fukushima Prefecture 70 miles away where 7 people died just shopping, walking down the street in the first year. Imagine a street where in 1 year 7 people dropped dead on. And the only thing they all had in common was they were in a radioactive nuclear wasteland. Or as the Japs like to say, difficult return zone, aka nuclear wasteland. The urine is so radioactive it's measuring 3,000 microsieverts in all 15 people tested. We had a poll on the last show on Thursday night. Or Friday night, 2 days ago. Because United Nations kicked me offline for a week. Should degenerates like United Nations, International Atomic Energy Agency, United Nations, unclear, you guessed it, United Nations, be banned from social media? And so they should. They are the actual military-industrial complex. They're the equivalent of a terrorist organization. This device here you're looking at is an old-fashioned automatic candle snuffer. And so they slip it down the candle, and when the candle burns down, these spring-loaded wings will come in and put the flame out. So if you put it, say, this far, you know the lights are going to go out in an hour's time. So if you're reading a book, you don't have to worry about the candle burning itself down to the ground. Pretty neat invention, right? And so after a while, then the springs will just close it because there's nothing to hold it open, right? I thought that'd be fun for everybody to see. Old-fashioned technology that actually works. Go figure. Hi, everybody. Atoms for peace. Atoms for degenerate. It was actually a quote James Lucid had left on the comment section one time. It's like a lot of comments they stuck. And some of them ended up in shirts. That one was a t-shirt. Atoms for peace was never all that peaceful. And the world is still living with the consequences. Well, not the world, but 8 million species, all the flora and the fauna. And the humanity is destined to doom because of these perpetual emitters that have been released into the environment. And they knew the difference when they done it. They done it out of contempt. Astronomical amount of radiation in downtown Tokyo. You know what that means? That means you're supposed to abandon 36 million people. We should have abandoned Tokyo. And it's never too late. Directly outside the government building. Horrific readings where kids were playing in Fukushima. Extreme levels found where food is grown for elementary school lunches. And the evidence points that everything is on purpose. The universities, the nuclear industry, the International Atomic Energy Agency in particular, are the number one enemy. They have done everything they can to destroy you and your future. And they're in overdrive now. Now they claim that they're going to have 3 times the nuclear capacity. They don't have the people. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the supply network. And they're not going to put it together. It's a fortune to reassemble all of that. The average person takes 4 years to be versed and educated in the construction of nuclear disease factories. Nuclear nursery schools taking field trips. I got a couple of them. One more, or that's the last one. Nursery school taking field trips so kids can play in areas with less radioactivity. So they take the kids on school trips an hour away. Because the radiation there at the school is 800% higher than at the school than it is where they're taking the kids to play. Kids can't play at the school. So should they evacuate them out of there? A, or should they keep going to school there? B. If you selected B, hello nuclear scumbag. You selected A, hello human. 70 years ago, on December 8, Eisenhower delivered the Atoms for Peace speech from the United Nations, which shouldn't exist. It shouldn't exist. United Nations, which was the League of Nations pre-Hiroshima and Nagasaki, shouldn't exist. They're unbelievable degenerates. And everybody that works for them seems to be trying to up the ante of degeneracy. This study came out yesterday, the 9th of December 2023, and this was cesium microparticles, because we've covered that quite a bit over the last year, right? We try to catch everything, and we're pretty good at catching everything that's coming out on this subject. We're probably better than good. We're probably got the best amount of documentation, period, anywhere on the planet that's public. Radiocesium-bearing microparticles found in dry deposition. So they took samples right away, and I say that loosely, by the way, after the Fukushima nuclear. You can't call it an accident. They built it in an earthquake zone where you get 1,000 earthquakes a year, and where you got a 3,000-year legacy of massive tsunamis. So to call it an accident is dishonest, isn't it? Still exist in the environment 2 forms of absorbed species. Imagine calling radiation fallout species. Well, it is. It's alive. It pulses energy every second for millions of years. What's the longest living species on the planet? It's anthropogenic man-made radiation, right? On mineral particles in the soil and microparticles containing radiocesium. So apparently nothing else exists, only radiocesium, despite what I showed you a few minutes ago. cesium microparticles are dispersed not only around Fukushima nuclear disease factory, but over a wide area of the Kanto region. Wide area of the Kanto region. Ain't that an interesting statement? The west coast of North America, in fact, Ottawa's study at central Canada was 220 million atoms per liter of just the iodine-129, which meant that thing was saturated with all the other isotopes too, that single liter. And this was sustained for many months. 15 million year half-life, so it never goes away. And it saturates the thyroid glands of all the species. So it's an abomination to the survival of any species. The smaller species, because it produces your thyroid glands, for instance, become saturated right away and permanently so. And everything else, right? Their bones and everything else. But just having the thyroid glands saturated, because we all did, because we all drink water, and cook in it, and bathe in it, and eat it, and wash our clothes and dishes and everything else and food into it. Yeah, you can't escape it, and it's on purpose. They're not even trying to come up with any solutions, see? There is no solutions. You can't filter out atoms. 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129 in rain. Detected in aquifers supplies drinking water. No, it covered the whole country. When you're getting it per liter, that means it's a continuous plume, right? And so the thyroid glands are producing radioactive hormones just for starters. And which means you're going to sterilize all the species, particularly the insects and the birds. And the birds, most of the birds you see now are seed eaters, not insect eaters, because they got wiped out for lack of insects, right? Post-Fukushima. So this gets really interesting. 106 cesium microparticles derived from Unit 2. So they're claiming in the study that showed up yesterday were successfully separated from 13 tissue paper samples. So right after the accident, they went into these local areas, and not local, but local in the context of radioactive fallout, within 50 miles. And they were wiping up, not very many, but they wiped up, so they would wipe up 100 square centimeter section of a balcony, or the lid of a car, the hood of a car, or some structures, right? And each piece of paper towel, it was dry, by the way, was put into a Ziploc baggie. And it was tested in 2019. And all they looked for, and all they acknowledged was cesium, because apparently reactors don't run on uranium and plutonium anymore. They only run on cesium, according to academics who would sell you out in a heartbeat. So why would they invoke Unit 2? They're suggesting that this came from Unit 2. And there's the propaganda about Unit 2 goes way back. Damage at Unit 2 is what prompted TEPCO to discuss evacuating the Fukushima workers, perhaps because the reactor burnt continuously for several days. So it burnt continuously for several days. But there's other buildings that burnt continuously for several days, like Reactor 3, Reactor 4. So here's Reactor 2. So why would you suggest that the fallout you're getting and testing today, almost 13 years later, is from that reactor? Then how can you how can you tell the difference between Reactor 3 and Reactor 4? And there's no models of radioactive fallout anywhere on the entire planet from Reactor 4. The official story is Reactor 4 never got damaged outside of locally. I mean, it's obvious the building is completely destroyed. And so this is Reactor 1. So there's Reactor 1. Reactor 2 is next to it. If you're heading north, there's Reactor 2. Then it's Reactor 3, and then it's Reactor 4. So if you were looking, if you took samples of radiation back then, and you had hindsight, because it's 2019, you're going to study those samples, would you look at Unit 2 as the culprit, or would you look at reactor 4 and reactor 3, which are completely gone, as the better culprit? Million becquerels, this was the xenon-133, I believe, per square meter. There was the xenon, this was the model of the xenon-133 fallout. This model was only based upon 13 days rather. There was another study showing 1,500 atoms of radioactive sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyball per cubic meter of air in California. So you had a study of iodine-129, which means it would have been, saturated with the 131, the 132, the 133 iodines, not just the 129. So that's 4 different isotopes that we can quantify. Then you got the xenon-133 at 1 million becquerels per square meter. Then you got the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs from spraying salt water on the melted infernos that are cooking along at around 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. The radiation images of the 2 types of the cesium microparticles discovered in Yushiku City demonstrated that cesium microparticles can easily become susceptible to fragmentation over time, even in the absence of weathering effects. Does anybody really believe there's not still hemorrhaging out of these disease factories? The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant accident released a large amount of radioactive material into the environment. Among them, radiocesium affects the environment because of its long half-life. Radiocesium has been believed to be released into the environment by the accident in 2 forms. One is solutable aerosol state. It accounts for the majority of the released radiocesium. Radiocesium released from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant was carried with sulfate aerosols in the atmosphere and deposited on the ground. And 95% of the released cesium was deposited on forests, vegetables, and rice paddies. They're harvesting food in the rice paddies right alongside tens of thousands of 1-ton bags of radiation right by the nuclear meltdowns within the site of it, in the center of 14 prefectures that were banned by 55 countries for a decade because of the perpetual radioactive fallout, quantified by the fact it picked up 30 million 1-ton bags. So the people who wrote this study should be stripped of their degrees, and probably should serve 15 or 20 years in jail for such an egregious betrayal. So the other form is insoluble particles believed to be released directly from the nuclear reactor damaged. Does that look like it's damaged or destroyed? There's no building left. There's not a nuclear scientist on the planet will look at that and say there's a fuel pool and there's the reactor core, because it's not. They know it's not. But they all told you that it was there, but it's not. And the reason is because it's a catastrophic event for all species. We got a poll tonight. If I can get this together here tonight. Oh yeah, we got a great poll tonight actually. Should Conference of Parties 28 be considered useless after promoting deadly nuclear power radioactive disease factories, which are nuclear power plants? Because they're gone nuts over there now. They've never promoted nuclear before. Now it's promoted everywhere. I'm going to play this clip of actual journalists, and they're going to tell you that they're at the top of the building that doesn't even exist. Right? They're going to say they're at the very way above that, looking down on it, on that building over right there. So take a good look at the building to your left. It doesn't exist. They should have razed it to the ground, but they kept the stump there so they can pretend that they're in the building that actually doesn't even exist.
I was standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
I had volume too low. Just 1 second. I'll turn it up.
Where I was standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this.
I mean, this is crazy stuff. This is unbelievable contempt. That's the only way you can describe it. This is contempt. And hatred. And coordinated hatred. So that you got the whole world's media participated in lying to you. The entire planet's media regurgitated on purpose, coordinated, they went through a lot of effort to pretend they're in a building that don't exist. Why would they take a chance on something like that? Because it's like cotton candy? Or because it's lethal to everything with replicating cells? There's 2 types of cesium small modular or cesium microparticles, type A, type B, which differ in size, shape, and the 134 cesium, 137 cesium radioactivity ratio. Type A particles were emitted from unit 2 and 3 can be spherical or non-spherical. From unit 2 and 3. Why would you invoke? Well, yeah, there's no doubt unit 2 lost a lot, right? And unit 2 went down and hit the water tables, the reactor core, and the fuel pools after burning constantly for a couple of days. It burnt down into the earth at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. When it came in contact with water, the water expands so rapidly it cracks the earth open, hydrovolcanic eruptions. And the steam that's coming out of the ground, which is perpetual, is so lethal in 6 places. It was at 10 sieverts per hour by the stationary Geiger counters that they have there that maxed out at 10 sieverts per hour. And 3 sieverts is considered a lethal dose to the human. So the steam by proxy would have been hundreds and hundreds of sieverts. So it would have radiated everything within a huge area. So they would have had to abandon that area for extreme periods of time. And when the steam finally stopped, radioactive waste stopped coming out of the ground, they would have went in with big steel plates and cement and pavement. And so they would have put steel plates, then cement, and pavement, and steel plates, and cements, and pavements. They would have built it up 5 or 6 feet tall before they were finally able to try to contain it in that area. But they would have sacrificed a lot of people in order, none of them academics, none of them scientists, none of them journalists. The 134 cesium, 137 cesium radioactivity ratios of the inventories in Unit 2 is estimated to be 1.08, and Unit 3 is 1.05. Well, I can't remember what that means off the top of my head. My apologies. Well, look, there was nothing left in Reactor 3 and 4 right away. By day 6, there is nothing left. That is completely gone. There's nothing left. And then a couple of years later, when they limbed it out, it was beyond evident to anybody with even in the academic community. It was blatantly obvious. Anybody in the academic community sees the picture, knows the fuel is gone and the reactor core is in. The consequences are catastrophic of losing that much inventory. These dwarf on a large scale. They dwarf Chernobyl. Each of these buildings is worse than Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Santa Susana, the Mayak, and many other nuclear meltdowns combined. The inventories we're talking about 40 years of reactor cores at the top of the buildings are gone. It could be up to 10 million pounds in a building gone. These numbers are just, they make Chernobyl look irrelevant. Chernobyl is not irrelevant. They actually closed 9,400 farms after Chernobyl in Ireland, Scotland, and the United Kingdom. And so they decided just to cover it up, pretend nothing happened, continue growing food in the actual nuclear wasteland, shipping it to the countries. It's insidious. It's just the cruelest humans imaginable that perpetrated these types of crimes against humanity. Cesium microparticles, listen, it was saturated with uranium, plutonium, the biggest byproduct of the irradiated fuel rod. Take to the, hang on here, I'll find it for you. I'll find it. It's just crazy. So, curium isotopes are a major byproduct in the irradiated fuel rod, which means not cesium, not iodine, but the curium. And the curium lead shielding, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. And plutonium, the toxicity of inhaled plutonium dioxide in beagle dogs and beagle puppies was 144 beagle dogs were given a single inhalation. Tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, the liver occurred beginning about 3 years after the exposure. Bone tumors found in 93 dogs were the most common cause of death out of 144. Now, they all died of tumors. Lung tumors found in 46 dogs were the second most common cause of death. Liver tumors were found in 20 dogs, but the cause of death in only 2 dogs occurred later than the tumors in the bones and lungs. Tumors in these 3 organs often occur in the same animal at the same time. And these findings, just bear with me, I'll find the rest of it. These findings suggest that the similar dose-related biological effects could be expected in humans accidentally exposed to uranium oxides. But that's not true, because it was discovered that human kidneys are 50%, at least 50 times less efficient than animal kidneys at removing plutonium. 50 times less efficient than the animals, and the animals all died in the studies. Okay, but the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods isn't plutonium, but there's a lot. The biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods is the curium isotopes, and curium isotopes, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium, so it's 20 times worse. And your kidneys, remember, are 50 times less efficient than a dog's kidney. And because this study is from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico, Dr. Raymond Gilmedy and genocidal killer, beagle dog killer crew, which is a Navy organization, by the way, is making those findings. But obviously, he's got a lot at stake to play it down. Now, he said Fukushima couldn't reach the United States. Right? KRQE attacked me on their TV after WHIP in 2014. I went out and looked up Gilmedy, and I got 95 studies from Gilmedy, and Gilmedy was an expert in killing beagle dogs and beagle puppies. So I can take you down the rocky road of the rest of those cesium microparticles, but obviously they're perpetual liars. These are disgusting liars. So they're talking that the cesium microparticles transferred to the Kanto region were found to have originated from Unit 2 reactor based on their shape. So what they're saying is Unit 2 is worse than these reactors. Right? They're saying Reactor 4 didn't even happen, and same as the media is claiming. They're saying Unit 2, which is still intact, like looking, but the reactors are actually gone deep into the earth. Reactor 2 is the only one that looks normal. So they ignored reactor 1, which the fuel pool detonated, and I showed you the explosions at the beginning, right? But right away, when you look at reactor 3 and 4, and the academics who write these papers would have known and seen those pictures, would have known that they were the culprit. Reactor 4 was definitely a culprit. Look at it to your right. Tomatoes. Drinking hydrogen peroxide. Now, what you have to look it up yourself, but you can use like a spoonful of hydrogen peroxide. You can mix it in with some water and gargle it and spit it back up if you got a really sore throat, because a lot of sore throats are bacteria and fungus, right? A bacteria infection, rather. And so hydrogen peroxide will kill the bacteria. It's really good at killing germs and bacteria and viruses. Operation Long Jump. So the Japanese have been stalking me heavily for over a decade. Operation Long Jump was an alleged German plan to simultaneously assassinate Joseph Stalin, Winston Churchill, and Franklin D. Roosevelt, which would have been pretty cool if it had succeeded. The big three Allied leaders, the big three scumbags. And so I'm going to play a video clip of this stalker. We call him Calm Down Charlie. What have we got down here? Let me double check everything, because that is the right video. And so United Nations banned me for the last week. So we got a poll. We got a poll to honor them. Should the degenerate shitlegs like United Nations, International Atomic Energy Agency, UNSCLEAR, etc., 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 be banned from social media? They really should be banned from social media. It's 195 militaries. Social media is supposed to be for us, not for them, right? Hi there.
Hello, Mr. Dana.
Hello, scumbag. Hello, rapist. How you doing?
That's very nice, Mr. Dana.
What do you want?
I'm calling you to tell you Operation Long Jump is moving forward.
Yeah, what's operation?
Over the last 3 months, it's going to be much worse.
Are you threatening? Are you threatening? Are you threatening me?
It's just a warning, Mr. Dana. Just a warning.
So why are you calling?
You know what's gonna happen.
What's your name again?
Yoshida Mashada.
Oh, yeah.
Tokyo Bureau, Chicago Division.
Tokyo, Chicago Division of what? Haha.
Chicago Division of the Bureau. Tokyo Bureau.
So you represent the Tokyo government?
Stop talking nonsense, Mr. Dana. Stop talking nonsense.
So what kind of nonsense are you talking about?
Your nonsense.
What do you mean?
Long jump. Operation Long Jump moving forward. Stay prepared.
So did the reactors blow up? So you're threatening me, right? Did the reactors blow up?
Not a threat, Mr. Dana.
Well, that is a threat, obviously.
No. You threatened many people over the years. We don't like that, Mr. Dana.
I couldn't care.
Your damn gonna be over. You're finished. Operation Long Jump.
Well, I'm alive and well. You have a nice night there, scumbag. I'm alive and well. And so, Charlie, that was a death threat, because Operation Long Jump is an assassination plot, right? Remember they were going to get Stuttering Foot, or whatever his name is, to beat me up, nuclear scumbag? That didn't pan out too well for him. In fact, I beat him up every day for the next 2 weeks. But that was a death threat. And so I'm thinking about going to the police and filing a case against Calm Down Charlie. And if I connect him back to TEPCO or the Japanese embassy in Chicago, which we did with his original phone numbers 10 years ago, he's been stalking me for 10 years, and I'm tired of it. And I got him on video on a number of occasions now doing this to me. But that was 2 days ago, stalking me again. Thanks, Brandon. That's great. Glad you mentioned that. Somebody was saying that they can't see the poll. I'll bring the poll up for everybody. Should constipated party, Conference of Parties 28 be considered useless after promoting the deadly nuclear power disease factories known as nuclear power plants? So it was quite interesting. A political scientist at the University of New Brunswick stated the Operation Long Jump was not the work of a Soviet disinformation campaign because the German commanders had carried out other daring raids, and he noted that Roosevelt recorded that he was personally informed of the plot by Stalin himself. So why is Calm Down Charlie threatening to assassinate me? Why would he do that? Like on a live show, why would he record himself doing that? Because he's a moron? Well, he's pro-nuclear, so yeah, that makes sense. And so I was trying to put up these beautiful T-shirts, and it was Conference of Party promotes nuclear for the first time in 28 years. And so they took that, every itineration of that shirt that I tried to put up got taken down. And so at one section I left nothing, there was no titles or anything. And I tried to add it into another section of T-shirts that have been up for a couple of months. 15 minutes later, they took that page down of all my Fukushima Extinction Event down. So United Nations not only kicked me off YouTube for 7 days last week, but United Nations also has taken their policies. You can't even criticize them. And I wasn't criticizing them, I was trying to have a conversation, because if you look at all the news reports, the news was clearly, this was just a news story. Here's the International Atomic Energy Agency. Nuclear power finally had its moment at UN climate change. UN's Conference of Parties 28 Climate Change Conference. So they were promoting nuclear. Thousands of tons of dead fish washed ashore in Japan. 3 months after the nations released the treated Fukushima radioactive water into the sea. 3 months after they released it. Wait, what? 3 months after they released it. It's been released forever. It's been coming out of Fukushima, killing people for almost 13 straight years. There's 865,000 extra cancers in Japan in just 2011 alone. Cancer is just one of many, many diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries that will manifest. Yeah, 865,000 cancers in 2012, a year after Fukushima. So there's how many people don't have health care? How many people weren't diagnosed? There's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory problems, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. Deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. And that's because of radioactive fallout. This is the toll in real time of Fukushima. They're shipping billions of pounds a year out of the nuclear wasteland, and now it's caught up to society. Thousands of tons of dead fish washed up on a beach in northern Japan, prompting speculations that the release of the treated radioactive water from Fukushima nuclear plant has wreaked havoc on the local ecosystem. Has wreaked hell on the local ecosystem. Well, I screwed that up today. I apologize, I'm on YouTube. Not much I can do about it. You gotta suck it up, okay? Where am I to here? I'm way off kilter. Protesting's good, but education's better. Protest is great, but you need education, right? That's what I do here for a very long time. I've lost track. The release of treated. How are you going to treat water? Like I can put 200 million atoms, anthropogenic man-made atoms, on the head of a needle, but I can't see it. A single atom can just wreck your immune system because your immune system has to repair the damage from it every second. So the atom pulses energy like an explosion in every direction. That's wrecking millions each time, every second. Millions of chromosome, DNA, and cells. And it's causing permanent lesions to your organs. Every second, that's just one atom. And so imagine getting thousands of these things in your body. And when you do it, it's called leukemia because you're producing more white blood cells than red blood cells. Then you get sick and die. The sardines is some mackerel washed ashore. And Hokkaido, which is up by Hokkaido, which is the most northerly part, far, far away from Fukushima, by the way. On Japan's northernmost main island of Hokkaido. New York Times, October 11, 2013. We have Fukushima polluting the entire Pacific Ocean. And we're talking about how people should be dressed. An influential actor. They may have become exhausted due to the lack of oxygen while moving in a densely packed school in shallow water. They've never seen it before, ever. That's open ocean you're talking about right there. It's open ocean. If fish runs out of oxygen, they'll just veer away. It's not like they run out of oxygen. Not like they're a bee, where they'll run out of oxygen, they'll die right away. Because that's how you kill wasp, right? You take a gallon can, or a 5-gallon can, rather, and you pour about that much gas down into it, and then you put the whole container over the wasp nest, like just hold it there for a few seconds, and because they breathe through their skin, they suffocate right away with these fumes. All of them will suffocate, including what's in the nest. And if I was you, I'd keep it up there for about a minute, and then just scrape off the wasp nest, and that's the end of it, if you got access to it, right? That's what the professionals will do. They'll bring like a gas spray bottle, and in an emergency, they'll hit it with the gas spray bottle. They may have become exhausted due to lack of oxygen while moving in densely packed schools. No, well, that's what they do. That's how they lay eggs. They come in densely packed schools. That's how that works, right? That's a normal sight when this ocean was healthy, but it did not die off, but coming in later eggs. That's how it works. May have suddenly entered cold water during their migration and succumbed to shock. Or whoever wrote the article, they might have seen your face and dropped dead because they were so scared. May have suddenly entered cold waters during their migration. What an interesting phrasing, right? And succumbed to shock. Or there were so many of them, they sucked up all the oxygen, they died. Like whoever wrote that should be ashamed that their parents didn't drown them when they were born. Typical plans to dump water stored at Fukushima Daiichi into the Pacific. That's 2013, by the way. The plant had already released enormous amounts of highly contaminated water directly into the ocean from a plethora of leaks. Well, it's not. I showed you the buildings. They're not leaks. They're completely gone. None of those buildings are leaking. They're all hemorrhaging. Right? I'll give you a picture in a second. Because I'm changing windows here. I mean, let's see how many leaks. I don't know if these buildings are leaking, but Some of the reactors are leaking. I don't know if they're leaking. They look pretty good to me. That's what pro-nuclear says. Well, they look okay, Dana. What's the problem? Not even going to get out of that. Yeah, 30 million bags or something. That's it, Dana. Actually, it's only 2.2 grams of tritium, right? There's only 2.2 grams of tritium, Dana. And it's equal to 3 grams of sugar, Dana. And the professor is a professor of nuclear and quantum engineering, Dana. He's smarter than you. Right, that's the argument I hear, right? China has since banned Japanese seafood. But why would you, because China, so South Korea, Taiwan, China, and Japan are working together. So they're talking about seafood instead of talking about the fact that the reactors are gone. They lost their entire inventories. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags. And that the food was banned in 14 prefectures by 55 countries for a decade. And they replaced those people and got a lot of them countries opened up, right? Does that mean it was safe? Of course not. Does it mean it can never be safe? Of course not. The reactors are still melting down. At some point, you're going to have to go there and fix that. Some generations will have to go there and try to fix it, whatever is left. Try to stop it from doing endless. Right now, there's no way to contain it. We don't have the technology to contain the meltdown. So they rolled out the apologists who said that there's no meltdowns and that it's like 3 grams of sugar. And as a species, we should be humiliated that there are humans who would do that. They don't have a right to exterminate our planet. And that's what's happening. They're exterminating you and the planet. And they're well on their way. There's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. You seen the spikes in Alzheimer's and dementia yet? Have you caught that in your neighborhoods? There's Down syndrome and autism have gone 50,000-fold because of Fukushima. And when you look at Fukushima, post-Fukushima, pre-Fukushima, you look at the trends post-Fukushima, the weather trends. Supercell storm after storm, supercell cyclones, supercell typhoons, supercell hurricanes. We've never seen that. Where storms are coming ashore at 200 miles per hour, for goodness sakes. We don't have any infrastructure with building codes for 200 miles per hour. There's not a nuclear scientist on the planet who looked at it and said there's fuel pools and reactor cores are there. They all said, screw humanity, screw everybody. I'm a nuclear expert, and that's all that matters. I can pretend to my friends that I'm special, and that's what I'm going to do. And that's what they've done. That's what they've always done. China has since banned Japanese seafood. So instead of banning all the food, which is the right thing to do, it's the proper response, it's the normal response, it's the lucid response, right? Is to ban everything. Why would you want to trust a country with 30 million one-ton bags from 3% of the landmass in just a local prefecture? They should have cleaned up all the prefectures, which you can't clean up. You know, the reactors actually blew up. The plumes covered the planet in less than a month. All the models and the actual academic studies prove it. Workers at Reactor 3 say the nuclear fuel is gone from the spent fuel pool. It's gone. Let's have a look. That's Unit 3 over there. Yeah, oh yeah, that's gone. Gee, 2/3 of the buildings is gone. And where was the fuel in the reactors? Oh, at the very top of the building. China has since banned the Japanese seafood. South Korea protesters attempted to enter the Japanese embassy. This was artificially inflated. A protest to protest tritium. And then flip, right, and then get the whole conversation about tritium instead of the whole conversation about the real issue and the actual pressing concerns. It's despicable. This industry has no right to exist. So now they're threatening to assassinate me. And so I'm heartbroken that they're targeting me for being a good person. So this is no doubt a die-off. This is a mass die-off. And the locals have never seen anything like it. See, you see where Fukushima's to? Fukushima's right here. Aikido is way up there. Do you see what they're doing to you? Local residents said they'd never seen anything like it. Some gathered fish to sell. Prompting town to urge residents not to consume the fish, and a notice posted on his website. Because no one listens to their radio or TV anymore. In March 2011, the Fukushima nuclear power plant was wrecked. It was wrecked. It wasn't wrecked, it's completely gone. It was disappeared. Now an undersea tunnel is being used to discharge radioactive water treated by the Advanced Liquid Processing System known as ELPS. Now the problem with it is we know in 2014 that the REVA filtration system, the ELPS filtration system, the Siri filtration system, none of that worked. That's 3 years later, 3.5 years later for the REVA, or for the REVA, which was the French filter. I'll show it to you actually. Because if I don't show it to you, then the trolls will say, see, if it was real, Dana would have showed it to you. How come he didn't show it to you? Because it's not real, see? That's how they work. He's a liar. Let's go this way. Did I get the right one? We won't know till I try. Next time, so TEPCO abandoned the REVA system. This is August 12, 2014, 3.5 years later. It's never been used, which is the same as the ELPS system. TEPCO unable to bring contaminated water under control at Fukushima, 2014, April. So that's 3 years, 1 month later. The Advanced Liquid Processing System has yet to function. It admitted it will not be realized the handling of the water, treating the water. Well, so then they were storing water to pouring over reactor cores that they admit is 2.2 sieverts per liter of beta, pretending that alphas, neutrons, and gammas don't exist. Let's just say there is only beta. So 5 gallons, you can never walk past it without dying. 5-gallon can at the subway, everybody for 1 million years will die that walks past it. So 1,000 tanks. So if you fill up a tank, for instance, you're talking about 1.4 million sieverts. 3 sieverts is a lethal dose. 1.4 million sieverts mean you can't build another tank there, and you can't get back on the site. Now imagine putting that in a hose, a long hose, and length is important, because the more volume, the more sieverts are emitted from it, which means you can't step over the pipes or the hoses or whatever they're using to transfer it to the ELPS or the REVA or the Siri systems, which is water filtration system that obviously didn't work. And so you can't step over the pipes or the hoses going from the tanks to the thing. First off, how are you going to connect the hose to a tank with 1.4 million sieverts of only beta? And it can't be just only beta. It's got to be gammas, alphas, and neutrons, and by proxy then X-rays. But if you put that combination together, what happens? The heavy particulates, the fuel particulates will sink to the bottom, and you got gammas and alphas and neutrons and betas, so you got a chain reaction. You got a criticality going on in the tanks. We've seen that in Hanford, at the Mayak, in the former Soviet Union. And so then what happens is it burns a hole through the tank and it floods down to the earth. You're talking lethal doses, you never get back on the site. And they know that. And that's why nothing's in the tank. The tanks were built. And that's why 60 of them moved during an earthquake 2 years ago. Because if they were full, they wouldn't have moved. They were empty. Now, why won't they let anybody take independent samples? Because they're empty. How come the International Atomic Energy Agency never went there till this year? because no nuclear scientists went there, no nuclear academics. There's no corporations there. Start rubbing my eye, I get myself in all kinds of trouble here. So the groundwater bypass operation didn't work. They couldn't build a fence, and they wanted $1 billion. Because you can't build a fence to stop something like this. And I'll explain that at the end. TEPCO's ice wall didn't work. So the series system didn't work. They stopped mentioning it in 2013. Plant area release. So imagine the series system. So this was the same as the Kurion, where they're going to separate cesium-137 from the fuel water they're pouring over the reactor melted core. They're pumping back up, they say. The pumps won't work in that environment, by the way. Even if it did, the hoses, you can never step over the hoses without getting a lethal dose. So the series system is supposed to separate 137 from the curium, uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, 1,000 of other fission products. But all of these are the same size when it comes to the human experience. So you're talking about 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. But let's say 10,000 of them are cesium. So how are you going to separate 10,000 cesium that are the same size as uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, and everything else? How are you going to separate those isotopes from the other isotopes with chemicals at a nuclear meltdown site? Anybody? There is no precedence for something like that. It's ludicrous. You have to contain everything. You can't separate atoms. You can't take water molecules and yank out cesium, plutonium, uranium, and everything else, and then claim the only thing left over is tritium. That's the craziest batshit lunatic thing ever in my life. So when the water goes through the filter, it's aggregating the curium, uranium, plutonium, americium. 20 minutes later, you got to run away because there's a lethal dose in the filter. You can never change the filter. And they claim they got 4,500 filters. Because once you tell a lie, the lie got to get bigger and bigger and bigger. In this case, right? So TEPCO plans to dump the water. It had already released, that's 2013, and we showed this one earlier. The plant had already released enormous amounts of highly contaminated water directly into the ocean from a plethora of leaks from the reactor buildings. And just to knock it out of the park, let me give you one more example that we don't use too often. I'll get there, bear with me. Let me see if I can find it. I'm a sucker for punishment. There's so much, you actually can't keep up with it. I'm at it all the time, so I'm a bit more fortunate. So we're almost there, I think. Oh, the list is there's so much that I want to tell you about. But I'm just going to focus on that one. Hang on. Sometimes I'm lucky, sometimes I'm not. It's crazy, eh? I can't find it, so. I should have that picked out and put in a separate folder, that particular stuff, and I don't. So I apologize. I thought I could find it, though. I'm pretty cocky, right? Pretty sad when I can't find it. Well, here's one example. I'll give you that one. Here's what some of the like when you talk about liters for a second. So when you talk about liters, 22 liters was 6.3 billion becquerels, which is 286,000 per liter. But there was also 290,000 per cubic centimeter, at 10,400 tons that they acknowledged, right? But they also, because the radiation is so much danger on that site, there's parts of the site they don't even have control of because it's a nuclear wasteland. EU Energy Commissioner called Fukushima an apocalypse, and almost everything is out of control. France says Japan has lost control. The French should leave the country. Swiss says abandon Tokyo because of radiation from Fukushima 240 miles away. The energy official says they lost all control. And that's because you've seen the pictures I showed you earlier. And like I said, every nuclear scientist on the planet, that's what they were saying originally, see? The ambassador, the Japanese U.S. ambassador, says this could one day be considered the start of the ultimate catastrophe of the world and the planet. South Korea called Japan's handling incompetent, and they were right. 1,000 years from now, contaminated water from Fukushima may still be entering the Pacific Ocean. At over a sievert per hour, TEPCO had done nothing for the last 2 years to stop the radioactive leak. So you can't call a sievert per hour a leak. That's a catastrophic event. We've never seen nothing like that in human history. The process sees tritium, less radioactive isotope, added to the contaminated water, which is mixed with clean. Now see, tritium is drowned out by cesium singles and uranium singles and curium singles and americium singles, and even iodine-129 single will drown out the tritium signal. And to suggest that they're going to filter out everything, only tritium is left over, so it's criminal. And they can't win in court because they don't have a leg to stand on. But they own the court, they own the universities, and they own your entire media. We've never seen any dissenting voices for the last 9 years or so. Nothing. And Greenpeace puts a lot of effort into cutting your throat. Even disgusting Greenpeace, with Sean Burney, the nuclear expert, who used to work at Donneray, by the way, and Donneray won't be cleaned up for at least another 300 years in the United Kingdom, which is a former fuel processing site in the United Kingdom, in Scotland, but owned by UK, by the British rather. Greenpeace said the radiological risk had not been fully assessed and that the biological impacts of tritium have been ignored. So, like, why is Greenpeace talking about tritium? Greenpeace, who have the resources and access, know bloody well the reactor's gone. And I tweeted this picture to them, and they blocked me. All of them. Greenpeace Canada, Greenpeace USA, Greenpeace Belgium, Greenpeace blah, 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 blah. All blocked me on their Twitters. And then, you fearmonger. South Korea is protesting tritium. Artificially inflated on purpose, right? All the media come out screeching tritium, and all the protesters ran out. What? Stop it! Hey, I'm going to protest. You can't do that. You can't do that. And it was 7 ways to Sunday. Yeah, and they got them out there everywhere, protesting tritium instead of nuclear meltdowns and all the other fission products that goes with it. Tell Labour they're dreaming. Australia's the worst. Well, after Britain, Australia's the worst. their media and their government are just degenerates, and their universities, they're degenerates when it comes to nuclear. I know a lot of Australia, I love them, but the media, and same thing with the United Kingdom, I love these people, but I mean, the media, the universities are scum. They're literally scum, the worst, they're scum of the earth. I don't understand how it's even possible to have that many degenerates in one place. It probably explains why we're getting so many mass shootings at universities. Tell Labour they're dreaming. We should have gone nuclear years ago. He said, let the bastards freeze in the dark, was the quip of Sir John Carrick, a senior minister in the Fraser government, in response to the refusal of the Greens equivalent and others to accept any consideration for nuclear power. He quipped that there should be bumper stickers saying, let the bastards freeze in the dark, because they didn't want nuclear. Now, geothermal obviously would have been the best energy source, especially Australia, for God's sakes. In Australia, you can set up geothermal almost at the surface. There's so much heat there, right? To put in political terms, we want them to make policies that our grandchildren will benefit from. Like when you hear language like that, you need to get on top of these people right away. Unfortunately, short-term populism gets too much sway. 50 so more years later, people might be coming to their senses. Technology is always changing. It shouldn't be judged by its earlier itinerations. We don't expect to use sundials. Think about this statement coming up. This is hilarious. Every once in a while, a scumbag will show up and just wow me. And it's pretty hard to wow any of us around here regularly. But this scumbag, I think everybody's in for a special treat of scumbaggery here tonight. We don't expect to use sundials to tell the time. And the first cars didn't have airbags, cup holders, seat belts, or the capacity to go speeds and distances today's cars can go. So why do we judge nuclear power by old, outdated technology? Why would you conflate seatbelts and cup holders with a nuclear accident, moron? If your car breaks down, you don't flood a continent with xenon-133 at 450,000 times above detection levels that wipes out the majority of the species. And we don't, like, when you talk about sundials, we have watches. We developed the technology. Watches. They're okay. They don't melt down and burn down countries. So why do we judge nuclear power by old, outdated technology? Because if your car cup holders and seatbelts can't be equated with the fact that Fukushima fallout, they had 105,000 sites with millions and millions of one-ton bags. We don't expect to use sundials to tell the time, and first cars didn't have airbags, cup holders, seat belts, or the capacity to go speeds and distances we do now. So why do we judge nuclear power? My God. What a really, what were they thinking when they wrote that story? Like, what really goes through someone's head to write something like that? In all honesty, what the hell goes through somebody's head? The Fukushima accident in 2011 and the reactors 40 years ago at the same time, it's well over a decade ago. There was no direct deaths at the time, but subsequently the disaster-related deaths have been put at 2,000. And the 2 years, 21 to 22 hour road toll was in fact total over 2,200. So they're saying the people that died in accidents from drinking and driving and other accidents is equal to a nuclear meltdown every 2 years in Australia. Really. The extreme increase of mortality caused by cardiac diseases, death rates might give the creeps to some people, was just in a single month, was 12,000, almost 13,000 people died of heart attacks compared to any other month of any other year. A Fukushima roll toll every 2 years and we hardly blink. What an arrogant sack of no good that person is who wrote this. You got any idea how many billions and billions of pounds are grown in the 14 prefectures that are banned by 55 countries, and appropriately so, for a decade? So you're talking about 5 or 6 billion pounds of just rice coming out of these prefectures from a nuclear wastelands. And you're talking about heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. There's endless diseases and illnesses, not immune deficiencies besides cancer. How can you compare that to car accidents, you disgusting parasite? You're talking about billions of people being poisoned and ending up with debilitating illnesses and diseases. And they didn't get elected to help the country. They got elected to help a group of scumbags, like the World Economic Forum. Perhaps it's humanity's collective guilt at the terrible horror of Hiroshima, but that wasn't an accident. It was quite deliberate, a horrific explosion. That is not to be equated with Fukushima or 3 Mile Island. And yet Japan is now extending the life of existing plants and is committed to a next generation plant being built. Japan didn't, the nuclear industry did. The people didn't want it. And so when you're talking about committed to a next generation plant being built, why are you showing a great big old decrepit reactor for? The new generation is supposed to be small modular reactors. The only company with a license to build one, without the full application by the way into the regulatory agency, which needs 1 million pieces of paper, is NuScale. NuScale just got dropped on his head by the investors because it's not even trying to build a reactor, and there's supposed to be ready next year. They're not even trying to build it. It was 100% Ponzi scheme, where they get money from one investor to get started, and then the money from the next investor pays that investor, and money from the next investor pays the other investors. It's a Ponzi scheme, right? And every couple of months you rinse and recycle the stock routine, where you say, oh, gee, there's a big spike, there's going to be big demand, and they get all the victims that got their pensions there to invest in it, and then it crashes 5 days later and they lose all their pensions. And that's how they're paying their investors with these Ponzi schemes. Every facet of nuclear is just one great big despicable scumbag. The Greens are one criminal empire. It's a complete criminal empire that is self-perpetuating misery. It's nothing but an endless misery machine from the emissions. The Greens and environmental movements have a lot to answer for. Worldwide, they have posed one of the cleanest and most efficient source of energies in the entire planet. Like, what are you talking about? Every nuclear power plant needs 2 gas and oil and coal plants, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to run a nuclear power plant. You need 2 of these, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to build it. It's the most resource-intensive thing on the entire planet. Everything has to be triple inspected. It has to be the best of the best before it can go to the site. And 90% of everything on the site is bombarded with neutrons and is too radioactive to be recycled. I mean, the Sellafield, or I can't even remember the name in United Kingdom, the big plant they're building there now, enough cement to build a sidewalk from United Kingdom to Rome. It's the biggest construction on the planet in history. And they're calling it carbon-free, believe it or not. I can't remember the name of it. Oops, that's not correct. We are very happy to use it in health scans and nuclear medicine general. What do you mean you're very happy? Who's very happy? How many people do you think were happy that went and had it done to them? The medical waste that they're talking about, by the way, they want to bury it in a deep geological repository under prime farmland, no less, as usual. It's so harmless that the victims that they inject the radiation into are kept in what they call it, known as $1 million room. It's lined with lead, and that all their excrements, their urine and their stooge is put into a separate container and brought to a nuclear holding site for thousands of years. There was one patient who was getting radioactive chemo-radiation combination therapy, which has got nothing to do with therapy. And he decided he wanted out. So he went home, got a taxi, went home. And when he went home, he peed outside the back window. And they came and dug up the dirt from behind the back of his house because it's so radioactive for so long. With children in America, they'll take them away from the parents, bring them to the hospital, inject the chemicals or radiation or combinations into them. And when they're dying and they can't survive for sure, they'll bring them back to their parents and leave them to make it out on their own. But ask us to agree where to put it away from big cities and go into meltdown. And using it for clean energies, for some people, a crazy thought. Actually, we'd be mad not to. So whoever wrote this was the nuclear industry, and whoever put their name on it got a kickback. That's how they make a living. That's how a journalist makes money. Is they build up an audience with fluff, and then the corporations, the lobbying groups, will write articles, send it to them. They'll put their name on it and stick it out there and endorse it, and pretend they wrote it, and then the corporations, the nuclear industry net, will send them a kickback. If we gone nuclear years ago, our use of coal would be much lower. Well, you got to have 2 gas, oil, and coal plants just to have a nuclear power plant. Dedicated to build it, dedicated to run it for its entire life, and then for 100 years to decommission it. You got to have those 2 gas, oil, and coal plants. Our per capita emissions are high, but that's not the relevant figures used by doomsayers to frighten us into thinking we are big contributors to the problem, which we're not. They're 1.1% or something. Their figure is 1.1% of the global CO2 emissions, they say. Most of that is from the dirty uranium mining they're doing there, which was used at Fukushima, by the way. Australia is spending so much money on nuclear subs. Australia is spending enough money on nuclear subs to build enough geothermal for the entire country twice at current prices. Try wrapping your brain around that statement. They can solve all their energy needs permanently with the money they're going to waste on. And the only reason they're doing that is because they have 7 of the top 10 weapons manufacturers have set up shop now in Australia. The 7 top misery machines on the planet are set up in Australia, and they will suck Australia dry now because they got to make a profit every month. And the way they can make a profit is if they steal it from the population. They're real-life parasites. Plans announced to build a small modular reactor to Palestine nuclear plant, which, listen, that's never going to happen. We're talking about Holtec, for God's sakes. It's claiming nuclear energy is carbon-free, but it's a controversial issue due to the hazards. The hazards are so bad that they had the CNN, ABC Australia, BBC United Kingdom, CBS America go out and pretend that they're in a building that don't exist. Why take such a chance? Kevin Camp's a radioactive waste specialist from Beyond Nuclear. Beyond Nuclear, like, I'll play a clip of Kevin Camp, who's claiming that Fukushima fuel pools didn't melt down. He's the expert whose job is to distract you away from the facts. Right there, they're the poison tree. So if you go over that tree, that fruit you're getting from there is poison. But anyway, let's let Kevin.
High-level radioactive waste storage pools, and incredibly, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the nuclear industry, has given short shrift to the safety risks of pools. So these are catastrophes waiting to happen. There's the slower motion boil-down scenario on the pools, but there's the fast motion drain-down scenario. And one instance of that we can point to in the United States several times now over the decades is the near drop of heavy loads. And one of my favorites, because I'm from there, Southwest Michigan, is Palisades Atomic Reactor, October 2005, nearly dropped a load weighing 107 tons. It dangled over the pool for 2 days. They nearly overrode the emergency brake on the crane, which would have been catastrophic. You could drain these pools pretty much instantly. The waste would be on fire in a matter of hours. and the radioactivity releases would dwarf what we've seen at Fukushima Daiichi. There's no radio.
So he's talking about Palestine, same as we're just talking about in the story. And he's saying that Fukushima didn't melt down, is what he's saying. That the fuel pools didn't melt down at Fukushima. Saying that it would dwarf Fukushima. It'd have to be pretty bad to dwarf Fukushima. I'm not going to say it wouldn't be bad. Because it is. So the risks to the Great Lakes are too big to justify nuclear power, which is true. But you got to go, when you look at Kevin Camps, you got to realize how much poison he puts out there too. So if you look at the history of the tritium alone, not counting all the other isotopes, and there's endless amounts, but just of tritium from the Kanto reactors here in Canada, in 1979, the tritium groundwater concentrations were 2.15 million becquerels per liter, following the release of 666 trillion becquerels at Pickering nuclear plant, right? But Pickering releases 480,000 trillion becquerels a year. So when you look at the accent that says it was 2.15 million becquerels per liter in the Great Lakes for the drinking water, because that's where they get their drinking water, and their intakes are right by Pickering discharges from the nuclear disease factory there. 666 trillion becquerels. So let me do the math here. I'll bring up the calculator for everybody. Because they're talking about tritium, 666, and there's 480. I'll bring it up for you in a second. 480,000 is released each year, trillion. So let's divide 666 into it. Nice round number. So 720 times. There's 720 times. So you get about 720 by 2.15 million. So you got to multiply that by 215,000, and that equals. So you had a potential at some points for 1.5 billion becquerels per liter because of the releases that are legal. But if you do the mathematics on Point Lepereur, which is in New Brunswick in Canada, the Kanto reactor, is 16,400,000 trillion. 16,400,000 trillion, yeah. These are absurd numbers. You can actually hide a nuclear meltdown with these types of numbers that are legal. That are actually legal. Canada at one point had a 40,000 becquerel per liter for drinking water in 1976. In the U.S., the state of Colorado was allowed 18.5 becquerels per liter. So Canada don't give a shit about anything or anybody. They were captured by the nuclear industries in the 40s and the 50s. And Canada as a country doesn't exist. This is the most pro-nuclear country on the entire planet is Canada. And they're scumbags. They're actually scumbags. The regulatory agency is just... it's humiliating. Activists are terrified that the risk of a nuclear meltdown is similar to disasters, not to mention the compounded risk with the new small modular reactors. And so small modular reactors will produce 35 times more intermediate level waste, 30 times more high level waste, and 5 times more fuel rods than a conventional reactor when they're scaled up. Or modulars, and because they're going to build them in groups, right? And which would be the animosity equivalent of a large reactor, but they can't exist without using the mixed oxide fuel, and that's the last thing you want to use, which is illegal in Canada and the United States and many other countries, because you're talking about reclaiming uranium, plutonium, and then the emissions from that once you come out of the reactor and go into a fuel pool are just revolting. So just a typical reactor, when you take it out and put it in the fuel pool, it's still splitting atoms. When was the last time you heard beyond nuclear mention that word? It's still splitting atoms, the same amount as it was when it was producing power. There's no containment. So you boil off about 120,000 liters a day. And so these are I might as well finish this out. So here, I'll show it to you. Bear with me. Here we go. So one of the strangest things I came across, and I started researching, was farms. Nuclear power plants are surrounded by farms. Literally all of them are surrounded by farms, as far as you can see. These are active farms that are shifting the food out. The fuel pools at the facilities are all hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. You have to replace about 120,000 liters per fuel pool. Each reactor has 2 fuel pools. The site has a common fuel pool itself, which is massive. And so when you start looking up nuclear power plants, you start realizing the majority of them are surrounded by farms, which is quite peculiar when you think about the fact that they know that the food sucks up radiation like crazy. It's a sponge for radioactive fallout, and that these amount of radiation bioaccumulating in children and humans and everybody else is not 10 to 100 times higher vulnerability for children, and it's not just cancer. It's thousands of times because they're developing, right? Their whole system is being developed, for goodness sakes. And so their thyroids are producing radioactive hormones, and their bones are producing radioactive stem cells. So let's flip that and look at the other species, because they're much more vulnerable again, right? By orders of magnitude on top of that. And so therefore, this is the quickest way to exterminate a planet without the planet understanding what is happening. Constipated Party 28, Conference of Parties 28, tackling health impacts of climate change in the spotlight. So they got this the first time they've ever had a health day at United Nations Climate Conference. UN World Health Organization welcomes the new declaration and aims to help accelerate action to protect people. United Nations is going to protect people. Now I know I lost my mind. According to the World Health Organization, the very last organization any human should ever trust, the climate crisis drives the extreme weather that has taken lives around the world. No, the climate crisis is caused by a pulse event after 80 years of emissions that have put us in a perfect position. The model to your left is based upon 21 days of radioactive fallout. And that's the French model. Now, the French model doesn't have all these isotopes into it. It's just cesium-137. But it should have all the curium isotopes into it and the americiums, the fission products. And everything comes out of all of these plumes. The plumes there's no harmless particles in the plume. They're all hot particles. And so you're saturating the entire planet. Because just because the model stopped don't mean the radioactive fallout stopped. Moreover, the same emissions that are warming our planet are also poisoning the air we breathe. Yeah, it's called radioactive fallout. It's been going on for 80 years. And it's undeniable.
Jet streams are also real, and they take 3 days.
Cancer clusters...
Jet stream, it never stopped coming.
Sorry about that. The cancer clusters started in the 90s during peak radioactive fallout. World Health Organization estimated air pollution kills some 7 million people worldwide every year. This was a falsely artificial number. Right? James Hansen had done the study, and then a couple of years back, this showed up, and it was taken as evidence, but it's obviously not evidence when you look at it. Let me see if we can find scumbag James Hansen. Former NASA scumbag. Oh, shitty luck I got. I found it. Oh, that's not the one I wanted, though. I don't know if I should be happy or not. Oh, I didn't wait. Here we go. This is always a circus. Hansen. I only say that because I disrespect Hansen so much. So he spent 15 minutes a single time in front of Congress. I think it was 1986. You can look him up on Wikipedia and see this yourself. James Hansen, proposed solutions. Scroll down to see proposed solutions. The paper examined mortality rates per unit electrical power produced from fossil fuels, coal, and natural gases, as well as nuclear power. Estimated 1.8 million air pollution deaths were prevented between 1971 and 2009 through the use of nuclear power instead of fossil fuel. 1971 to 2009, which is 64,000 a year. It's estimated 1.8 million air pollutions total from 1971 to 2009. So their paper supersedes United Nations by decades. So the World Health Organization, suggesting there's 7 million people a year, can easily be debunked by using scumbags paper, right? They just say whatever they want in order to justify their horror. Japan Times column, Japan Times, the major media in Japan. As the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time, the truth will come out about Fukushima. 2011. Now Japan is like, nothing got out, only 2.2 grams of tritium. But they produced a lot of material that, and they should be challenged, right? Did such a... Alice Levine, performing My Dad Wrote a Porno. My Dad Wrote a Porno. That's the name of the play that they're doing at the Sydney Opera House in the United Kingdom. She said, I also visited Fukushima Exclusion Zone, which is the site of the 2000 nuclear disaster. It's a bizarre place with a deserted nursing home and a high street stewed with abandoned cars. We wore devices that measured the levels of the radiation we were picked up while filming, which didn't feel really very reassuring. It was very eerie, but there were attempts underway to try and make something of the disaster zone, and train stations being converted into a renewable energy hub. Blah, blah, blah. Never in a million years did I think I would travel the world. My dad wrote a podcast I presented with two friends. And also visit the exclusion zone, which is the site of 2011 disaster, bizarre place, etc., etc. An abandoned, a deserted nursing home. Well, back in the day, June the 25th, 2011, 80,000 children and pregnant women were given the same meters as she had. These are useless meters, by the way. You can't read them. Congenital heart disease operations in 2019. In 2019, there was an estimated 14.2% increase in the number of operations for congenital malformation in neonates and infants across Japan. Not Fukushima Prefecture, but Japan. In Japan, these are catastrophic numbers. 14,200 children per 100,000 need open heart surgery. Remember, this is a place where they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. There's 105,000 sites like that, full of millions of one-ton bags of radiation. Whatever people's fear, nuclear is the icing on the cake of green investing. I don't understand some of these I don't understand some of these stories. Like, this is how they make money. They create a site and they write fluff stories to drag people in. And then the lobbying group will say, well, we'll give you $1,000 to print this article, but you got to put your name on it and pretend you wrote it. And they're too happy to take the $1,000, right? And that's why they created this site. They went and got an education, and then they sold their souls endlessly times, and then now they get kickbacks. And there's thousands and thousands of these sites out there. And if they take off, then they get a big budget, and they're just used to be like Boing Boing, and these technological blogs. To suck in, Popular Mechanics. When the internet was coming along, the Popular Mechanics realized right away that they were the most visited site, so the lobbyists bought that up, and that is used to manipulate endless people as they came online. I don't know how many people, like years ago, because I used to help a lot of people. I used to fix computers and that. And there was a lot of people, they loved Popular Mechanics. They couldn't wait when they got online to go visit it. And I just seen it so many times. And they were just amazed at this technology. But this was a total propaganda machine. And they got sucked way into the deep end with a big current keeping them there. All they can do is tread water until they couldn't tread no more. Fortunately, investors can do something more positive and laugh at the hypocrisy of our leaders. Well, the people that write these articles are the worst that humanity, some of the worst that humanity has to offer. UK launches surveillance flights to find Hamas hostages. So United Kingdom, does anybody really believe what's going on here? So the best way to brainwash United Kingdom is to put out a story like that, isn't it? There's 17,000 women and children killed. Israel, that was a false flag, right? Israel didn't challenge Hamas in 15 places where they broke down. I put a video up about it, not that, a month ago or something. You can go watch it. It's really something. Uranium hitting 15-year highs and nuclear power demand surges. And they artificially do this over and over and over. And the price is up to $80. Right? It started off with this group that bought, £1 million of raw uranium. They didn't take possession of it. They just bought it and paid the rent and kept it there at $30 a pound. And then over the next 2 weeks, then they got investors to invest in uranium, drove up the stocks. They sold theirs for like $40 or something, made a huge amount of money. And then a couple of weeks later, they've done the same thing. A couple of weeks later, done the same thing. And they've been doing that now for a year and a half. And it's a Ponzi scheme. So it was an artificial glut. They bought up the uranium, raw uranium, yellow cake, from the mine itself, not the stuff that's gone through the chain reaction. Because there's two types of yellow cake, right? They're so slick. They call the mining stuff yellow cake, and the stuff that comes out of the chain reaction they're not going to use, that's yellow cake too. And so when you get worried about the yellow cake that came out of the chain reaction, it's like, what are you talking about? That came from a mine. But they've done that on purpose, right, to leave you confused, and there's no one there to defend you. Uranium is trading at a 15-year high of more than $80 a pound. Yeah, and then 3 days later, it dives back down to 50. In fact, the mines can't even make a profit at $80 with all the inflation, right? At Fukushima, it was $50 a pound just to break even for the miners. So it's a completely artificial inflation meant to rob unwary investors and unscrupulous traders are happy to throw the money into it. There's a big market whole body counters. Has Australia been nuked by the Mad Max movie? If you've ever seen the Mad Max movies, there's a lot of connotations there of radiation, right? And so the author of this story is asking the question, is there anything that you can point a finger at and say that the apocalypse for the movies was a manifestation of a nuclear meltdown or a nuclear war? But I think it was a nuclear. They had a solar flare that took out the power grid, and all nuclear power plants melted down at the same time. That's what I'm assuming happened for Mad Max. And because that's what will happen here if we have a Carrion event where we have a massive solar flare, like they did at Montreal, take out the planet's electrical grid, then all the nuclear power plants will melt down the same day. And this planet won't be habitable for millions of years. Yeah, so this was the shirt they took down 3 times. Shock and horror. Constipated Party 28 is moving to nuclear. Nuclear power finally had its moment at the UN Climate Summit after 28 years, yeah. Here's all the scumbags together. All the happy. Look at all the morons there to take the picture, to get their kickbacks. That's how they make their money, being morons. Look at him. He's such a moron. They got 2 great big cameras. I got the white one, the exact same one, I bet you. Xeon light. My God. Ew. Meanwhile, the only energy source, and we're going to end the show here soon. So I'm just going to skip past Xeon. We'll do her tomorrow. I just hate her guts. Her career is an environmental activist that promotes nuclear. What a disgusting parasite. The whole story is despicable. I went over to her website. This is an emergency. It's an emergency reactor. That's the name of her site. Emergency reactor. She was a former self-professed spokesperson for Rebellion. What is it? Extinction Rebellion or Rebellion Extinction or something? And so they didn't protest nuclear. She kept them away from nuclear, protesting nuclear. Okay, so before we go, I want it. Drilling completed for the geothermal projects in the Netherlands. Geothermal is the best way to go. Why would you look at nuclear, coal, gas, oil, or anything else when you can do geothermal? And it's dirt cheap compared to nuclear or gas, oil, and coal. Chile geothermal potentials. Yeah, they got the geothermal is everywhere. The man who could finally solve the geothermal puzzle. The only problem with geothermal was drilling deep enough. This one was a closed circuit system, and it's timed with 300 degrees or so Fahrenheit temperatures. And there's speculation about the lifespan of it. And look at the footprint it takes up. But Google just their geothermal unit for their data centers is the equivalent of energy for 2,400 homes, right? So all you're doing is transferring heat. So watch the heat coming up, and then it transfers up the rod to the person's arm, right? So that's all they're doing underground. It's just the other ones use convection heat. And so they just use these return, so closed loop system with good insulated pipes. And that's how it kind of works because of these special insulated pipes. And it's got some really good potential. They got a project for $325 million. It's 150 miles of pipes, I believe. 300 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. It's going to come online in 2024, October 2024. And so it's easy to build, and they're quick to build a geothermal. And his interest was prompted by the Canadian government's plan to spend $80 billion decommissioning oil wells. $80 billion to decommission oil wells. $80 billion? It's crazy. So that tech allows the drilling of these huge, precise radiators. It's improving all the time. You can drill up to 5.5 miles deep, and you get 750 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, which is hotter than the reactors, nuclear reactors, right? A Colorado town wants to use geothermal energy to heat and cool a section of its downtown core. Using $716,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Energy. So literally not very much money. It'll provide at least 50% of the heating, cooling for the community center. These are huge places. The town administration buildings are huge places. The high school is a huge place. The libraries, 20 townhouses, 20 condominiums for $750,000. So it wouldn't take long for it to pay itself off with that kind of attributes, right? Next generation deep geothermal plants start feeding power to Google data center. A 3.5 megawatt project. Apparently you can power 2,600 homes. And it's literally no footprint. So why would Google look at dirty nuclear for, say? And so there's tons of good news. If you look up geothermal energy regularly like I do, you start to notice all this incredible technology, and that you can use deep geo or any geothermal as a battery too. Electric Bulgaria opens geothermal energy systems. Underground water resources. Do not use underground water resources. Helps save 70% of the energy for heating and cooling. So there's a whole bunch of these different applications. There's heat and cooling, but there's also like a heat pump. And so in the wintertime, you're minus 10 degrees out, you can maintain 65 degrees in your house. And all you're doing is drilling down 100 feet and spending $5,000. Manitoba see more jobs in geothermal. It's time to give geothermal a real chance. Yeah, because geothermal can solve there's enough geothermal. There's 2 billion times more energy than we're currently using, which is 4,800 gigawatts. Then there's 1 billion times that underneath our planet, our feet. And the only thing stopping us is the ability to drill deep enough. And some of the technology we're seeing now that is coming online next year and the year after in a big way, like commercially, is the drill bits have hydraulic hammers, or pneumatic hammers driven by water pressure, 25,000 psi water pressurized cutters. So it'll grid cut the rocks at 25,000 psi. The hammer, the pneumatic hammer, will pound the rocks to make it a bit more easier for the drill bit to get through it. And it'll drill about 5, 6, 7 times quicker than a conventional drill, but it'll drill infinitely deeper, almost unlimited for depth, because it crushes up and pulverizes and slices the rocks. And then there's another one out there that is using a type of directed energy weapon to vaporize the rocks and drill down, right? And so all you got to do is tap in to the heat, and then you're good for hundreds of years. Because the new insulated pipes that they can use are very durable, they're very thick, and the technology is leaps and bounds every couple of weeks, right? There's some more technology showing up. Alrighty. That's it for Dana. We're 2 hours and 8 minutes in, are we? Alrighty. I don't know. Let me see. We got a poll. We'll close the poll down. Should Conference of Parties 28 be considered useless after promoting deadly nuclear power radioactive disease factories? We got 31 votes is 100%. And we're going to end the poll. We got 37 likes. My last video on Friday, when the show was over, I had 34 likes. 38 now. My last show I had 34 likes and 11 views when the show was over. So check the video after the show was over for how many views I got. So just take note of it, because normally you would have 90 or 100 at least. You know, I'm censored heavily, but I would have at least that many. And now it says 21, but when the show is over, it's probably going to say 11. It was 27 when the show was almost over the last time. I'd done the same thing 2 days ago. When the show was over, my video only had 11 views. They've been doing that for the last month or so to me. And I mean, last show they called me up on the phone at the beginning of the show and threatens to assassinate me if I don't stop educating the population with the documentation. So we'll end that. We raised 130 from James Lucid in particular on the weekend. Thank you, James. And it's good timing because my muffler appeared to break off yesterday when I got home and packed up alongside the house. And you can hear the truck going, whirr, and I got out, and sure enough, tomorrow's not a hot day, but 9 degrees. I'm going to, believe it or not, I'm going to put the front tires up on the blocks because I got to drive on Rams, right? Get the big tarp out because it's pretty wet out there. And I'm going to crawl underneath it to see if I can spot where it's broken. And if I can fix it myself, I can weld it up myself, I'll weld it. But if not, I'm going to have to get it into a garage, which makes... We only got like 600 kilometers on it because we took a couple of trips down to do some research with the quads. So I haven't put many miles on it. It's just heartbreaking. And I can't keep up with anything anymore. But we'll just keep up with this. That's good enough, right? And so I got 38 thumbs up. It says I got 21 views. So check the video after this to see how many views I really got. How they're going to give me, rather. Because normally you have 100. Just watch how they're going to rip me off again tonight. After a 2 hour and 10 minute show, there's lots of speculators coming to watch for a while. They would normally count as a view, right? At least get you into the algorithms where people can find you. And so the industry, because they got no one else to pick on, have got me tortured. They got me tortured. Okay, long day for me. I've been in here in the studio most of the day. I'm pretty burnt out. That's the way it goes on Sundays. And I'm feeling pretty good. I'm pretty grateful for that. And so, United. See everybody, hopefully, tomorrow night. I'm going to get black screen. See everybody tomorrow night. Have a great night. Have a great day tomorrow. Thanks for everybody. Thank you, everybody, for finding the time, the energy, the courage to hear the truth. See everybody on the next one. Take care.